he chases him straight into the dining area, leaps onto the table, and destroys the entire feast. Chaos erupts. Everyone yells at Churchill as the dinner is completely ruined, who was moments away from serious trouble. In the chaos, Crusoe slipped outside and dove straight into the fountain, where he eagerly snapped up the fish swimming inside. Panicked, Angus searched everywhere for him. Louis calmly assured him that he would find Crusoe and bring him back safely. After a long search, Louis finally located the creature, but something was different. Crusoe had grown, and not just a little. He was noticeably larger than before. Louis quickly called Angus. The moment Angus saw how much Crusoe had changed, reality hit him. With heavy hearts, they carefully loaded Crusoe into the back of a truck and drove toward the shoreline. Standing by the sea, Angus felt crushed, but deep down, he knew it was the right thing to do. The very next day, two fishermen, Jimmy and his friend Huey, were out at sea when they felt an intense pull on their rope. As Huey struggled to haul it in, their small boat began tipping dangerously. Then suddenly, a massive Crusoe rose from the ocean in front of them. Both men froze. Huey immediately saw opportunity, imagining the fortune such a creature could bring. But Jimmy refused. Capturing something like that felt wrong. As the boat began to sink, Crusoe dragged it farther from shore. Acting fast, Jimmy sliced the rope, saving their lives. As Crusoe disappeared beneath the waves, Jimmy stared in awe. He had never witnessed anything so strange or so magnificent. Meanwhile, Captain Hamilton informed Angus that his mother wanted him to begin military training immediately. Angus joined the soldiers and helped with drills and chores, but after a few days, the routine bored him. One morning, he slipped away and ran straight to the sea. He called out for Crusoe. Silence. Refusing to give up, Angus climbed into a small boat and rowed out farther. Then suddenly, the water exploded beside him. Crusoe surfaced, now enormous compared to before. Angus stared in disbelief at how much he had grown. With incredible strength, Crusoe lifted Angus onto his back. Though terrified at first, Angus soon relaxed, gripping tightly as they raced across the waves in an unforgettable ride. When Crusoe gently returned him to shore, Churchill caught the scent again and charged toward the water. Sergeant Strunk followed, stunned by what he was seeing. He could barely process the size of the creature before him. That night, Angus excitedly shared everything with Christie and Louis, the house filled with laughter, something it hadn't heard in a long time. Annie watched quietly from the doorway. A soft smile crossed her face before she turned away. Louis followed her, and she thanked him. Because of him, she had finally seen her children truly happy again. Louis simply laughed it off and walked away. But out at sea, the story wasn't over. Jimmy was already speaking to a reporter named Jock, describing the mysterious creature he had encountered. And news like that never stays quiet for long. Jock quickly realized that news of such a creature could transform the entire town. Investors would come. Tourists would flood the coast. Money would pour in. But Huey disagreed. The town was peaceful, simple, just the way it should be. The next morning, Captain Hamilton escorted Annie and her children to a hill overlooking the water. He proudly displayed the army's strength, explaining their defensive strategies and the weapons they used against threats. To demonstrate, he ordered his men to stage mock attacks on targets positioned in the shallows. The sound of gunfire echoed across the sea. Angus felt his stomach drop. If they continued, Crusoe could be caught in the crossfire. He begged Annie to stop the exercise, but Annie didn't understand why he was panicking. The soldiers fired blanks into the water. To them, it was harmless training. Meanwhile, Jimmy and Jock waited along the shoreline, cameras ready. They hoped to capture proof of the creature, but Crusoe never appeared. Frustrated, they built a crude fake model of the beast, photographed it, and published the image in the next day's newspaper. Sergeant Strunk saw the article. He instantly recognized the creature from the brief glimpse he'd had at sea. This wasn't imagination, it was real. That night, Christie quietly slipped into Angus's room. The two made a decision. They couldn't wait anymore. They ran from the house and guided Louis to the shoreline. Angus called out into the darkness. Then, the water shifted. Crusoe rose slowly to the surface, but something was wrong. He looked wilder, larger, unfamiliar. Before Angus could react, Crusoe surged forward, charging past him and Louis with frightening force. They watched helplessly as he disappeared back into the sea. Out on the water, Strunk and his men patrolled by boat, scanning the wave. Churchill Churchill barked frantically from the shore, sensing something approaching. Strunk ordered the boat toward the noise, and then Crusoe exploded from the depths. In a brutal instant, Churchill was gone. Silence fell. The soldiers panicked, unable to comprehend what they had just witnessed. They opened fire wildly toward the water, but Crusoe struck first. With a massive blow, he slammed into the boat, flipping it and throwing the soldiers into the sea. Back on land, Captain Hamilton heard the gunshots echoing across the coastline. Assuming enemy forces had attacked, he gave the order to retaliate, and just like that, the hunt for Crusoe had officially begun. Hamilton immediately ordered Annie to take the children and hide inside the house, but when Annie found Christie and asked about Angus, her heart dropped. He wasn't home. Panic surged through her. Out on the water, chaos ruled. Crusoe had completely lost control. In a terrifying display of strength, he seized Sergeant Strunk in his jaws and flung him through the air like he weighed nothing. At that exact moment, Angus arrived. He shouted for Crusoe, desperately trying to reach him, but the creature didn't respond. Without thinking, Angus ran into the shallows. He began to drown, and everything changed. The instant Crusoe saw Angus sinking, he released Strunk and turned back. In seconds, he reached Angus, lifting him from the water and dragging him safely to shore. Louis rushed forward, helping pull Angus onto the sand. They worked frantically to revive him. For a long, terrifying moment, nothing. No movement, no breath. Then, Angus gasped. Air rushed back into his lungs. His eyes fluttered open. Relief flooded the beach, and when he looked up, Crusoe stood nearby, watching. Not wild, not violent, protective. Meanwhile, Hamilton confirmed there were no enemy ships anywhere near the coast. This wasn't an invasion. It was chaos they had created themselves. But despite this, he ordered his men to continue firing into the water. When Hamilton stepped onto the shore, Crusoe slowly slipped beneath the surface again. Annie dropped to her knees beside Angus, holding him tightly. Without hesitation, Angus climbed onto Crusoe's broad back, trying to guide him away from danger. Annie screamed for Hamilton to stop the attack, but their radios had failed. There was no way to call the soldiers off. Hamilton, Annie, and Louis scrambled into a small boat and chased after them. Crusoe swam powerfully toward open sea, until suddenly, he collided with something unseen. A heavy military net stretched beneath the surface, designed to trap enemy vessels. Crusoe thrashed violently as the mesh wrapped around him. The more he fought, the tighter it pulled. When Hamilton's boat reached them, Louis shouted desperately for Angus to jump. The net was tightening, the soldiers were closing in, and Crusoe was running out of time. Angus leaned close to Crusoe's massive head. "You're my best friend, and I'll never forget you." Then, with a thunderous surge of strength, he launched upward. In one incredible leap, Crusoe burst free from the tangled mesh. He didn't return. Annie, Louis, and even Hamilton stood in stunned silence. Then relief turned into cheers. Crusoe was free. Free to belong where he always should have been. Out there, in the vast, open ocean. Angus watched the horizon, knowing some friendships aren't meant to last forever, but they change you forever. So, what do you think? Was this a heartwarming adventure about friendship and letting go? Or did it feel more like a childhood fantasy? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications, because the next adventure might be even bigger.